The first and most essential step in navigating the turmoil of an emotionally abusive narcissistic woman is to stand your ground and refuse to be manipulated. It may seem simple on the surface, but this act requires a profound internal fortitude, a deep understanding of who you are and what you will not compromise. Narcissists are masters of reading emotional currents. They instinctively detect insecurity, doubt, and hesitation, and they exploit it with precision. The moment you react with anger, guilt, or fear, you feed the very machinery of their control. By contrast, when you maintain calmness and composure, you present an unassailable barrier. You are no longer a participant in their game, and this alone disrupts their sense of dominance. To stand your ground is not about confrontation or aggression. It is a quiet, deliberate act of self-possession. It is saying, I know my worth, and I will not surrender it for the sake of someone empire or sake of someone else's whims. This requires awareness, reflection, and sometimes the painful recognition of how much of your energy has been diverted into appeasing another's ego. Philosophically, this mirrors the Jungian idea of individuation, the journey toward becoming a fully realized, autonomous self. The narcissist thrives in the shadows of others' unclaimed power, but when you claim your own, their influence diminishes. Refusing manipulation also means trusting your perceptions. A narcissist will twist words, frame events, and exploit vulnerabilities to make you doubt your own judgment. When you hold firm, when you rely on your clarity of thought and inner moral compass, you essentially mirror a truth they cannot control. And in that reflection, they encounter resistance for which they are utterly unprepared. Their strategies lose potency because they are built on others' compliance, not on the force of reason or mutual respect. Standing your ground is not a single act, but a continuous practice, a daily affirmation of your sovereignty over your mind and emotions. Each time you resist, you reclaim a fragment of power that may have been eroded over years of subtle abuse. And in doing so, you send an undeniable message. The narrative will no longer be theirs to write. The moment you realize this and act on it, you step into a space where true freedom begins. Remember this: power over yourself is the greatest weapon you will ever possess. Once you have claimed your calm and refuse to be manipulated, the next step is to set clear boundaries and, crucially, to enforce them consistently. Boundaries are not arbitrary rules. They are the visible manifestation of your inner limits, the lines that define what you will accept and what you will accept and what you will not. For an emotionally abusive narcissist, boundaries are existential threats. Their world relies on fluidity and ambiguity, on bending others to fit their desires. When you introduce a line they cannot cross, you challenge the very foundation of their influence. This is not about confrontation or punishment. It is about declaring that your emotional life is your own, untouchable by their whims. Setting boundaries begins with self-awareness. You must know what you value, what behavior you will tolerate, and what infringes upon your dignity. Many people hesitate to enforce these lines because they fear conflict or rejection. Yet, the truth is that not enforcing them invites ongoing manipulation. A boundary without enforcement is a paper wall. It looks protective, but crumbles under the first pressure. Consistency is the key. Each time you allow a violation, you weaken your position. Each time you stand firm, you strengthen it. The narcissist will often test your limits repeatedly, probing for cracks in resolve. Your task is not to win a battle of words, but to remain steady, unwavering, and principled. Philosophically, this is a reflection of Jung's concept of individuation. The self is formed, not only by what we embrace, but also by what we refuse. By delineating your space and protecting it, you are actively constructing a psyche that is sovereign and coherent. Narcissists who rely on the pliability of others cannot comprehend this steadfastness. To them, it is alien, unsettling, and threatening. Boundaries are the armor of the emotionally intelligent. They are silent declarations of self-respect and courage. When you enforce them, you do not just repel manipulation, you illuminate a truth the narcissist cannot face. Your life belongs to you alone. Remember this. Every boundary you draw is a step toward freedom, and freedom is the only antidote to control. The third step in disarming a narcissistic woman is perhaps the most liberating. Stop seeking her approval. Approval, in the context of narcissistic dynamics, is a subtle form of currency. It is the reinforcement that fuels her sense of power and significance. Every compliment, every concession, every attempt to placate her ego becomes a thread she can pull to manipulate, control, or unsettle you. When you release the need for validation from her, you begin to withdraw the very fuel that sustains her influence. This is not a matter of pride or arrogance. It is a profound act of self-possession. To stop seeking approval, you must first cultivate a deep and honest connection with your own values and convictions. When your sense of worth is anchored internally rather than externally, you cease to be swayed by praise or criticism alike. Narcissists excel at creating doubt, at turning compliments into traps and criticisms into tools. But when your self-perception is independent, you become impermeable to this distortion. Psychologically, you are reclaiming agency over your inner world. Philosophically, you are asserting that your reality is not a reflection of another's ego, but a product of your own consciousness. This process requires vigilance. There will be moments when the pull of old habits tempts you to seek recognition, approval, or acknowledgement from her. In these moments, remember that your life is your own and that the pursuit of someone else's approval is the very mechanism that allows manipulation to flourish. By choosing not to engage in this dynamic, you introduce a radical change into the pattern of control. Stopping the search for approval is, in essence, an act of freedom. It removes the strings from which the narcissist has been pulling, leaving her frustrated and unmoored. Each step you take toward self-validation is a step toward psychological independence, a step toward clarity, and a step toward clarity, and a step toward peace. In a world where many give away their power unconsciously, this is a radical transformative act. Remember this? The moment you no longer need their validation, you claim the ultimate power, the power to live unshaken, unbound, and true to yourself. The fourth step in dismantling the control of a narcissistic woman is deceptively simple, yet profoundly effective. Walk away from toxic drama. Narcissists thrive on emotional turbulence. Chaos is their playground, and your reactions are the currency they spend to assert dominance. Arguments, manipulations, and provocations are designed not to resolve conflict, but to destabilize you, to pull you into a vortex where your energy, focus, and sense of self are constantly redirected toward them. By refusing to participate, by choosing detachment over reaction, you deny them the very thing they crave, engagement. Walking away is not avoidance. It is not a retreat from responsibility or from life itself. Rather, it is a deliberate act of self-preservation and wisdom. When you disengage from needless conflict, you create a space in which clarity, reason, and perspective can thrive. Psychologically, you are reclaiming your attention, a resource that narcissists exploit with precision. Each time you resist the pull of drama, you fortify your inner autonomy, making yourself less vulnerable to manipulation. Philosophically, this act reflects a deeper truth about the human psyche. We are responsible for the energy we invest, and to squander it on the whims of another is to abdicate our sovereignty. Narcissists are drawn to those who can be stirred, provoked, or unsettled. By refusing to react, you present a paradox. They cannot comprehend a presence that is strong, steady, and unaffected by their attempts to control. This constancy undermines their identity because their power depends on the emotional chaos of others, not on their own clarity or moral grounding. Walking away also teaches an important lesson about limits, not just to the narcissist, but to yourself. It is a conscious recognition of where your engagement serves growth and where it only feeds destruction. This choice empowers you to focus on what truly matters: your life, your peace, and your evolution. Remember this: freedom is not found in arguments or confrontation, but in the calm assertion of your own path. When you step away from the storm, you reveal that the tempest holds no dominion over you, and that the only authority that truly matters is the one you grant yourself. The fifth principle in dealing with a narcissistic woman is to prioritize your own growth and happiness above all else. This may sound self-evident, but in practice, it is a radical and transformative act. Narcissists feed on the energy, attention, and vulnerabilities of others. The more you focus on them, on their moods, their opinions, their judgment, the more you relinquish your own power. When you consciously redirect your energy toward your own development, your achievements, and your emotional well-being, then you are no longer a resource for manipulation. You become an independent, autonomous presence they cannot dominate. Focusing on your own growth is not vanity or selfishness. It is an affirmation of your intrinsic worth and your responsibility to yourself. Success, personal development, and joy are not just rewards. They are protective forces. They cultivate resilience, sharpen clarity, and strengthen your inner boundaries in ways that mere resistance cannot achieve. Every skill you learn, every goal you accomplish, every moment you invest in your mental and emotional health becomes a shield against the chaos that a narcissist seeks to impose. Philosophically, this aligns with the Jungian notion of individuation, the process of becoming the person you are meant to be, separate from the projections and expectations of others. A narcissist attempts to impose her shadow onto your life, but when you focus on your own evolution, you illuminate your path with your own light, leaving her in the dark. She becomes unsettled, frustrated, and even obsessed, not because of who she is, but because of the independence and vitality she cannot control. Prioritizing your growth is also an act of subtle defiance. It is proof that your life is not defined by her whims or manipulations, but by your own choices, values, and vision. In doing so, you cultivate a life that is rich, meaningful, and resilient, one that no narcissist can diminish. Remember this: the more you invest in yourself, the less power others have over you, and the stronger your life becomes. Happiness, growth, and self-mastery are not just personal victories. They are the ultimate instruments of freedom. The final principle in navigating the storm of a narcissistic woman is to expose her patterns without anger. This is a subtle but immensely powerful act, because narcissists rely on confusion, ambiguity, and secrecy to maintain control. When you observe her behavior with clarity, when you recognize manipulation for what it is and articulate it calmly, you are holding up a mirror that reflects truths she cannot face. The key is detachment. This is not about shaming, lashing out, or seeking revenge. It is about seeing the dynamics for what they are, naming them internally, and acting from a place of awareness rather than emotion. Exposing her patterns is simultaneously an act of self-preservation and empowerment. When a narcissist can no longer cloak her actions in ambiguity, she loses the invisibility that enables her control. Each time you identify a tactic, whether it is gaslighting, guilt-tripping, or projection, you reclaim a fragment of your autonomy. This is not an aggressive confrontation. It is an intellectual acknowledgement of reality. Psychologically, you are separating your consciousness from her manipulations. Philosophically, you are refusing to let another person dictate your understanding of truth. This approach also underscores a deeper principle. Knowledge is power. The more clearly you see the mechanisms of abuse, the less they can operate unnoticed. The narcissist may become unsettled, anxious, or even obsessed because she thrives on invisibility and the compliance of others. Your calm recognition, your ability to name the patterns without reacting emotionally, is an inversion of her world. It turns her weapons into vulnerabilities. Importantly, this act nurtures inner freedom. You no longer live in reaction to chaos. You live in the clarity of awareness. You develop an unshakable confidence that comes not from dominance over another, but from mastery over yourself. In seeing clearly, you reclaim the narrative of your own life. Remember this: the greatest defense against manipulation is clarity of mind and steadiness of spirit. When you recognize the patterns without anger, you do more than survive. You rise above, and in doing so, you create a life that is unassailable, empowered, and fully your own.